What I miss most about being young, it's not being young. It's the idea of forever. That no matter what, everything is going to be okay. That my parents will always be there. That my friends will always be there. But life doesn't care what you want or what you wish for. Life is going to happen. And unfortunately, death follows behind it. This is going to be kind of a serious topic, something that's bugged me for like a very long time, and a lot of people are comfortable with not knowing or just like steadfast in their beliefs, and that's okay. I have nothing against that, but I'm one of those people. I like to have some form of reassurance. So we're going to go into the intro, and then we're going to continue on. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to read from my notes, and then I'm going to try to explain what I'm talking about in my notes as best as I can. So we're going to start with energy. If all matter is made of energy, and energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only converted, what happens to the energy that makes up our body? Well, it gets converted to chemical energy for animals, bugs, worms to use. Okay, but does our consciousness survive that conversion? Well, according to Scientific America, and I'll have the link and everything I clicked shown, scientists know that there is a strange form of consciousness that persists during the dream stages of sleep, despite the brain being mostly cut off from the world. So there is some reason to believe that consciousness could exist without a body or external world. However, because nothing exists beyond the physical, anything and everything that exists, including the process of the mind, is necessarily physically, I'm not real sure how to pronounce this word, I'm going to give it my best, I'm going to show it right here, instantiated. So I know that one's a little bit weird because it says, like, yes, a form of consciousness does exist when our brain is, for the most part, turned off, but it's still firing signals because, I mean, obviously we're still breathing in our sleep. We have REM sleep, you know, the dreaming processes. So, however, if our brain stopped functioning for whatever reason, would we still have consciousness? Well, according to the Stanford, EBSCO, I'll just throw it up here. Now, people most certainly retain some form of consciousness and awareness briefly after a clinical death. Clinical death is where the heart and lungs stop functioning, but the brain is still active. However, once the brain stops functioning, the consciousness disappears. So I don't know exactly what that means, because there are cases where people who have been declared brain dead still being able to some degree be aware of what's going on. So if your brain stops functioning and you are functionally brain dead, does that mean you stop existing as a human? Oh, trust me, it's about to get way weirder than that. This is from the Stanford EDU because I watched Chappie when I was younger and I remember a lot of that, and I played Call of Duty Black Ops 3 a couple years ago, and these are related, I promise. So what if we were to upload our consciousness as seen in the movie Chappie and also in Call of Duty Black Ops 3? Well, similar to what we see in Chappie, advances in supercomputing, brain mapping, and invasive imagery techniques are hopeful, but that is still years ahead of us. With that said, though, Dion, as we see in the movie, is wounded, carried to a chair, he has the helmet on, and then Chappie uploads his consciousness and then downloads it into a new robotic body. So when his consciousness was completely uploaded, his body died, but his consciousness survived the transformation from organic to inorganic. With that said, now what about Yolandi's brain? Well, we see in the beginning of the movie when Chappie's trying to map his brain, that he uses PS5s, I believe, or PS4s. Anyhow, he uses PlayStations. He built a helmet, put it on Yolandi's, mommy's head, mapped her brain, but towards the end, when she is killed, she's dead on the spot. And at the end of the movie, we see him send the blueprints to a machine shop. They build her a new body, and then he takes that test of her brain mapping, uploads it into the computer, and then downloads it into that body. So if Dion is 100% Dion, uploaded from the source, downloaded into a new body, is Yolandi still Yolandi? Or is Yolandi a look-alike, talk-alike, act-alike? I'm about to run out, so I'm going to stop you, restart you, and we're going to go to the Black Ops 3 thing. So in Call of Duty Black Ops 3, the main character, his buddy Hendrix, and then of course the rest of the wet work, the Black Ops group, have their brains connected to a DNI, which I forgot what that stood for, and it's connected to Corvus, which is an AI program that allows them to share information in real time, as well as create simulations in their mind for better training, as we see in the beginning game. Once the main character has his arms ripped off, he's uploaded into the Corvus program, and the first mission that you have him run is on a train where there's a bomb. However, there have been, when Hendrix is killed, his consciousness is uploaded into Corvus, and it's more or less transferred to a more like a paradise or a heaven of sorts, simply known as the Frozen Forest. So, like with Chappie and Black Ops 3, can our consciousnesses be uploaded? And while I say that's years ahead, billionaire and genius Elon Musk believes it can be. But this is my question. Will that be affordable to everyone? Well, actually, will that be allowed to everyone, or just to everyone who can afford it? And that also does present its own problems, like in the event of an EMP, what happens to this consciousness that are downloaded? It would be like dying twice. Now, from what experts say, it is not impossible, it's just highly improbable, because that's not how organic matter works. We see everything around us, hear everything around us in vibrations, reflections of lights, but in a computer system, it will be a system of ones and zeros. So picture this, what you're seeing now, and it looks like this. So the best example I can give, it'll be like 3D printing a football. A football is made of rubber and leather, which are organic materials, but when you put the data from the football into the printer and it prints it, that object is going to be made of plastic, but it's going to have the thread, the fabric lines. It's going to have the same shape, ridges, fiber lines, and leather print exactly like the original, exactly like the football that we are replicating. But unlike the football, this replica cannot be used and will not be treated the same way as it will. So even if we did upload our consciousness into a computer successfully and download it into something else, there is no guarantee that something else will work, act, or do everything that we can do in our organic bodies. I hope that made sense. I hope that analogy made sense. So can we download consciousness? Not yet. So is there a chance that our brains can survive after death with nothing? Kind of. Can we upload our consciousness? No. Life after death? Well, there is an overwhelming scientific consensus that there is no life after death. Well, how does this explain ghosts? Well, the big issue from a scientific standpoint is the lack of repeatable results. If it can't be repeated using the same method that got the result, then it can't be stated as a fact, and therefore must be ruled as debunked or a failure. And I'm going to pause you, stop you, bring you back. So now we're going to parapsychology. Parapsychology is the study of the paranormal phenomenon or phenomenon that cannot be explained by conventional scientific methods. Now parapsychology uses methods such as EMFs, electromagnetic field meters, digital thermometers, video cameras that include thermographic and night vision, and digital audio recorders. The most famous photo of a ghost is Norfolk, England, and Raymond Hole's The Brown Lady. Image here. And the most famous recording of paranormal activity is the exorcism of, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced this, my German isn't great. I have issues speaking English sometimes. Annaliese Michel. Here's a sample of what was said. And then here's a link to the rest of it in the description. So, scientists discover or believe that we think ghost or paranormal activity is simply might be our brains misinterpreting environmental information. Based on your own beliefs, it can be interpreted as a haunting. Also, influences could be causing misinterpretations as well. You tell a believer or a skeptic that wants to believe that a location is haunted, then every creak, moving curtain, or weird noise is a haunting. However, if you don't tell them that the location is haunting, it is just a moving curtain, it is just a creaky floorboard, it's just a weird noise. So is it one of those things, is it the power of suggestion why we see ghosts? Or is it the power of manifestation is why we see ghosts? And we're going to move on to that one next. Okay, this word I can't even pronounce, but it's spelled like this. It is the philosophical study of knowledge consisting of truth, belief, and evidence defined as reasoned true belief. All right, so I don't know the name of this experiment. I don't remember the school, but I remember the experiment. So this college got a group of people, I believe it was 12 people, brought them in and told them, I want you to create in your mind a person. So they created Frank. They gave Frank a backstory, what Frank did, how Frank died. And once they made Frank, later the instructor came in and told him, okay, I want you to make Frank make a sound of any kind. Of any measurable kind. Let's make it that way, because it's an experiment, and in order to have results, you must have it documented. So at first, nothing happened, and then days went by, nothing happened. But a couple weeks later, Frank did in fact make a noise. I don't remember what the noise was. I don't know if it was like he knocked or there was a groan, or I don't remember what Frank did, but Frank made an audible noise. And to make sure there was no tampering, once the experiment was done, they sweep the room, checked for recorders, speakers, anything that might have gave them a false result. Well, they didn't find anything. So after weeks of making Frank make noises, the instructor brought in a plant, placed it in the middle of the table, and told this group, make Frank move the plant in any measurable but visual way. So, similar to the noise, at first nothing happened. Days later, then weeks later, well, not so much weeks later, but like a couple weeks, Frank made one of the branches move. And it was recorded, it was documented, and then once that was done, same thing happened. They checked the room, made sure the AC was off, made sure the windows were closed, made sure a door was opened, and everyone was far enough that simply breathing would not have moved the leaf. And this continued, again, for a couple weeks. And then on the final day, the instructor came in, put the plant on the table like he did before, told the group, I want you to make Frank move the plant in any measurable way. Okay, this is easy, something they've done before and been doing for this few weeks now. But on his way out the door, the instructor said, Frank isn't real. And then he closed the door. Well, now this thing that's been happening for weeks, the moving of the leaves, the sound, gone. What took them weeks to do, weeks of believing and manifesting sounds and movements for an imaginary person that they created, gone, destroyed, no longer. Frank ceased to exist because the group no longer believed him. The instructor was correct. Frank was not real. He was created out of their imagination. He was created out of their belief. And through one simple truth, weeks of belief was gone. So, well, blind devotion does have its merits. At the same time, finding out the truth can be very devastating. And I'm not smart enough, nor am I creative enough to think of this experiment. This is something I remember reading. I don't remember the school. I don't remember the name of the experiment, but I remember the name of the manifestation. I remember what happened. This is not something I could just make up. So if you believe me, great. If you don't, great. Free country, you're allowed to do that. So, let's go over everything. Does the brain survive? Because consciousness survive after death? We're not sure. Can we upload our consciousness? Well, not yet. And even if we did, we don't know how that's going to work. Can we believe something to existing to a limited degree? Yes. Yes, we can. So I covered medical, philosophical, and theological. For others who don't know that word, it's religious. So let's cover another religious one. Reincarnation. Alright, so I had to reshoot this last bit because for whatever reason, the first time it didn't record all of it, for I don't know why. But this is the reincarnation. Alright, so reincarnation with Will Frank's The Medium, and here's the image here. Well, we have no direct evidence. We have at least good scientific evidence, and now we have to remember scientific evidence is repeatable results using the same method no matter the time. Pause. Sorry about that. I figured you didn't want to see me sneezing on camera. So, the evidence for reincarnation stems from the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson working with children by looking at a physical mechanism, the spontaneously sudden trigger of a memory of a place, person, or events these children should have known nothing about, or at least have not known about them in the detail that they did. Of course, with them being memories, they were checked, confirmed, and then verified that this event or that this thing was in fact where these kids said they were. And this also, some of these events also took place in other countries that these children were not born in. In fact, in 1966, there were over 22 cases of confirmed reincarnation. In the last 50 years, though, there have been over 2,500 cases of verified reincarnation. The most famous case is of Tata Shanti Devi. Sorry if I mispronounced that. She is the most documented case of reincarnation. And a little fun fact, it is illegal and a crime to reincarnate in China without the government's permission. So, well, is it possible for the brain of consciousness to survive after death? We don't know. It's not impossible. Is it possible to download consciousness into a new body or upload it? As of the moment, not yet. Are ghosts real? The debate's still out on that one. Can we believe things into existence by manifestation? To a limited degree, yes. Is reincarnation real? This one, you take with a grain of salt, because even though there are 2,500 verified cases, I can't say no, but I can't in good consciousness say yes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed all the links and snapshots and pictures that I provided. And so my next project, I think I'm going to do for the finish up of the wood part of the season 6, 7s. I'm going to make a wooden flute, but I'm also going to do a video on First Recon from Fallout New Vegas. And I'm also going to do a video of bowling tomorrow, actually. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed these videos, and until next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button. If you have any suggestions or criticisms, leave a comment. And if you want to stay tuned for my next project, don't forget to click that subscribe icon and ring that bell. So, until our next project, have a beautiful day.